experience for the past 2 years, whereby before ChatGPT was introduced to the public, when we talk to the chatbot, we know that it is a chatbot. But nowadays, we don't, it kind of blurs the line between human and computer. It kind of fails the Turing test. No, sorry, in this case, pass the Turing test. A Turing test means a test to test a computer whether a human identify them as a computer or a human counterpart. So natural language processing is one of the means to achieve that grail, that holy grail. And neural networks, it's where like deep learning and neural networks are quite related to each other, whereby it links with all those machine learning capabilities in a web, so that the computer itself understand, not to be sentient, but at least understand what's the learning process. And reinforcement learning and transfer learning is whereby, if you understand like Markov chain, that they learn from their previous output, or they learn from a new set of data sets. That's what we call a reinforcement learning. And generative model is where they create their own. This is a pitfall of some small little pitfall of artificial intelligence, where they generate their own models, generate their own output. So we have to be careful on this part. And the rest, when it comes to artificial intelligence, the rest like computer vision, robotics, these are more physical artificial intelligence. And expert system and fuzzy logic, genetic algorithm and speech recognitions, they are considered as a mix of experts in giving you the experts output, and also learning from other than words or mechanistic experience. And so back in 2022, the world was introduced with ChatGPT. Right? It was launched back in the end of 2022, but it was launched as a ChatGPT 3.5 to the public. But before this, by 2018, it has already established itself as a full module, as a large language model. ChatGPT is actually a module to learn how to talk or how to communicate like a human being, a natural language. Doesn't really mean that it has the best interest of the person who asked the question, because the main goal of large language model now is that it provides you as close as a human interaction, but not necessarily the best knowledge. It didn't have a module to keep track or say whether the knowledge is truth, justified, or correct. That is why there's a lot of talks about misinformation from large language model recently. And in fact, ethics and moral is also a problem when it comes to large language models interaction. I mean, I didn't put this in the slide, but when ChatGPT was introduced to the public, there were news that people talked to ChatGPT until they got a little bit distorted and they ended themselves. Yep. So there's no moral standpoint on this large language model. So please be careful when you use them. All right. So for the things like ChatGPT, they usually use these first 7 modules, or the general field of artificial intelligence. Yep. With the introduction of 4 Omega, now they can recognize speech. Now they can generate their own algorithm. They can learn more than what we human beings can do now. But again, that is what we have to accept. The more the technology progress, I believe large language model at the end of the day will encompass everything. They'll become the Skynet of our world, right? So if Skynet is the Terminator's baddie, so the thing is that we have to understand what is the limitation, what is the function, and how do we interact with them. To understand that, then only we know how to make full use, optimize their functionalities. All right. Then we've been talking about ChatGPT and ChatGPT. So is that it, right? So technically, on a corporate standpoint, ChatGPT got a few tens of billions of investment by Microsoft. And with that said, Microsoft actually requested that most of the stocks or the ownership of ChatGPT, the OpenAI, the mother company is called the OpenAI, be owned by Microsoft Office. And so ChatGPT's module is currently integrated in Copilot. And we as a user of Microsoft Office and Windows, we are getting the privilege to use Copilot for free to a certain degree. So the later models or the more advanced or better capable models, we need to pay. Or integration, like for example, Copilot into your Microsoft Office, you might need to pay for that. But that's the privilege we have to, the cost of that privilege. But regardless, there are also other types of large language models. ChatGPT is just like a Google. You know, that Google is a search engine. The real term is search engine. ChatGPT is a large language model. So we have other types of models such as Gemini by Google, Llama by Meta or Facebook. And then there are also these two that a lot of coders or programmers use. Me, myself, I usually use Cloud because they provide the best code output for you. Because as a programmer, I use Cloud just to get the base code before I can get the polishing of my codes. So we don't have to remember all the codes. So the silver lining of generative AI in academia. So since 2022, we've been given the functions of the knowledge of the world in our hand by queries only. We don't need to go to Google and ask or query for it and look for one by one. But generative AI, usually the large language model, helps us to compile, collate. Collate means they make some final summary for us into our to the output so that we can immediately get the knowledge and just copy and paste. That's the pitfall of it. Yes. And with that, like I mentioned, the moral ethics of the model is questionable. So please be careful when you look at that output. But here's a reflection of my work for the past 23 months. So currently, I'm also a sitting member of the Ali Jawatan Kuasa ChatGPT UKM, where we conduct some discussion about the ethics and also some of the moral policy. We also one of the people who made that provide the feedback of the recent ChatGPT policy by our government. And I'm also one of the lecturer of Discover of Generative Artificial Intelligence, but we are going to launch, we already launched it, but the class will be up soon once we've finalized all the modules. And why was I in there? You know, as a marine biologist, I'm a diver. I go out to the ocean. I don't really play a lot with computer. Then why was I there, right? So back in December 2022, I had a discussion with my ex-supervisor in Japan, James Reimer. So we had a discussion about, you know, both of us, we know at least 4 languages. So why not we look at how well the large language model, especially ChatGPT, in producing writings, right? In this case, we only asked it to write 300 letters of word because that time that was the maximum. And then at the same time, I asked some of my online friends to help me create what we call it as a countermeasure tools. Countermeasure tools means anything that we wrote using artificial intelligence or large language model, we try to put it that it can pick up. Whether it is written by human or it's written by artificial intelligence or large language model. So this was what we had we call it a pseudo Turing test. So the pseudo Turing test means we actually wrote 2 English and BM article, and then we asked ChatGPT to produce 4 other languages: English, BM, Mandarin, and Japanese. And we vetted the ChatGPT output to make sure that it was those generated articles. They were actually grammatically sound because it was new. Yeah. And note that the light colors represent the one that was generated by artificial intelligence, large language models. And we later on those which was not English. We translated using Google Translate, and we reworded with Quillbot, free Quillbot, with all the generated uh, what you call, sorry, the generated essays. So this was what we found from the multilingual Turing test, that this green means it passed the countermeasure tools. That means they mentioned that it was not written by artificial intelligence. But notice that only English was written by human. That was considered as pass. Then the rest, BM, Bahasa Malaysia artificially written, right? The generated large language model generated Mandarin and Japanese was also considered as pass. So which means that our current countermeasure tools having a very serious issue, whereby if we generate an essay in other language other than English, most of the countermeasure tools weren't capable of detecting it. Especially then it gives me a concern, because UKM, we deal with a lot of Bahasa Malaysia a lot, right? So I did push, and I really hope that anyone in Malaysia can come up with a Bahasa Malaysia, not Bahasa Nusantara. Bahasa Malaysia. Bahasa Nusantara means includes Brunei, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. But we need Bahasa Malaysia tools so that we can at least vet essays or articles that were written in Bahasa Malaysia, so that we don't we can pick up those were large language model generated. So we can put that as another form of, I wouldn't say plagiarism, but breach of ethics code. And again, what these two is that it is dark in color. So English and BM, which were paraphrased or translated using Google Translate, it shows a 50-50 chance, which means our Google Translate and also our Quillbot paraphrasing tools also have large language models incorporated in it. So now here's a gray line, is that how much is too much? Now, how much we rely on large language model is too much, right? So this study actually provides us a wake-up call, right? We need good detection tools other than English language, and translation and paraphrasing tools actually do use large language models. So please use them sparingly or with caution. When you want to submit your reports or your writings to a certain body that has those gatekeeping of turn it in. Turn it in nowadays do also have this function to detect AI generated articles. So just be careful on that. However, after a year, I did an unofficial test. The tools that were given by me by my peers, it couldn't detect anymore. So there's a cat and mouse game now. So just be careful with the countermeasure tools you are using right now. Make sure that you don't use only one. Use a few just to make sure that they are keeping up with the pace of improvement or technology development. Yes, please. Yes. In fact, Quillbot, they do have a function to put it into 4 levels. Which I'll show you later. That the 4 levels is actually very interesting. Yeah. So another thing is that when it comes to, like I mentioned, the cat and mouse chase, that means our writing, we are getting better. Some even dare to claim that professors can be phased out after 2 years. But I object. I beg to differ on that part, because again, when it comes to we have a PhD philosophy, something that mechanisms or large language models can't do, philosophy part. So we have to put that into a very big conscious that we need to still inject the philosophy part into our education, right? So, but the fun part is that now we have another software called Petal. This Petal is the ultimate, I call it the ultimate literature review machine. So it will literature review all your literature, and then you can write it out. You can put out the review in sentences or paragraph, and you can immediately copy and paste into your articles if you want to. So this again provide another question: is literature review valuable anymore? So this is a very big question that I try to raise. I want to raise to people because recently I do face this kind of issue when I'm a reviewer for such paper, right? What happened is that I try to look into, I try to copy some of their, yeah, their assignments, right? Like for example, abstracts or conclusion, because it's the shortest, 300 words. You can easily get it. This is from Quillbot, free Quillbot. So you see, if it is 100% written by generative AI, it will be 100%. But if the student or the author trying to be sneaky, put it into general AI and then put it into Quillbot for paraphrasing, we know. And then if you write your own sentence, but you let paraphrase tools to paraphrase for you, there's also another one called human written and AI refined. They will know as well. So that is the part whereby you can use this to gatekeep your students' assignments. Please show this. I know what you did last assignments to them so that they know they're aware of. Yeah. So yeah, even if you have, this 100%, 100%, but even if you inject a little bit into your writing, they will know, they will highlight it for you. Yep. Mhm. The silver line, yeah. Yep. All right. So one thing, yes, that's also a debate, but regarding to some of the journal article publishing companies, they want you to have a certificate of certificate from someone who has the certificate that passes the language, the IELTS or something language, English in Canada, English. I can't remember what's that certificate because it happened to me 3 days ago. I got a rejection for my one of my paper because they say I don't have that certificate. But my second author is a Canadian. Why do you need that certificate for? Right. So now the publishing company, I'm not so sure whether it is. I'm sorry, but this might be a bit controversial. Uh, are they trying to get some out of us because they want that particular certificate only? They don't care. They don't consider whether your second author or the other authors are native speaker or not. They want that certificate. Yeah. Yes. Yes. That's the silver lining of it. So yeah, we need to have this kind of discussion, everyone. Yeah, it's not just a closed door. I hope it's not just a closed door discussion. We need to have a proper discussion with everyone about the pitfall of large language models in academia. Yeah. And like recently there was like a few hundred people got retracted because of uh they found that it was written by large language models, some of it. And some even caught red-handed with thank if you want more, please search for those words in the manuscript. You can find that, you can find some of them in retract watch. But yeah, again, if you write your work in using large language models, that's the question of sense of ownership. When you have this kind of writing, when someone asks you a question, then you can't answer it. Like in page 6, line 20, you mentioned about this. What's your thought that back then? Then you'll be like, oh crap, someone, I didn't write it. I can't remember what happened. But if you wrote it yourself, somehow you know the context. right? So that's the sense of ownership and understanding the context of question. So that is what define us as the expertise in our field. So that's why I'm very much push for integration or assistance using large language model or AI, but not relying on them. Again. So what is artificial intelligence good for? Since I'm putting up all those bad news for you. So we can see that it provides a new job spec for us. It's called a prompt engineer. Now we don't ask question to Google anymore. We ask to large language model. We ask the right question. So if you know what objective you need, how do you want to ask the question? Probably you get what you want, and you got the correct answer, because you have to understand large language model do not have any filtration of moral or whether the information is true or not, the truth and the justification. So as an expert of our field, we need to know what sort of question we want to ask. We want to prompt them, and at the same time, we have to vet the output. Sometimes they provide some information that was too general to the point that it's not an information, it's just a general term. And sometimes they provide information that was quite old, that was debunked, but they didn't vet it themselves, so we have to vet ourselves, right? And since GitHub and Microsoft Office has a very strong a very strong relationship, now we can use Copilot in GitHub and anything which is integrated in GitHub, which means all these languages can be done via GitHub integration. One of the best case is that we, as a programmer in the future, we don't really need to remember all our scripts anymore. We just need to ask the large language model, because it is a large language model, so they know the language of coding as well. And since our code language is written in English, so it's easier for them to put out a proper code for us. And so coming back, that is how I use large language model helping me in my studies. So one of there are 5 things that I use large language model for, but mainly it's for machine learning, for my statistical analysis and my prediction and models. One of the data analysis that I've been using is that I use large language model to generate my codes. Let me explain to you how I do it. So, like for example, I want to create a map of Southeast Asia with Malaysia painted in red. I just put create a map of Southeast Asia with Malaysia painted in red. I want to create this map in R. So it creates a full script for me. It takes some time, and then just copy the whole thing, put it into my R Studio. Take some time. But again, you don't really need to remember all your script anymore. The computer will do it for you. The large language models. It is loading. And then aside for this kind of scripts online, like I mentioned earlier, you can also integrate it using Copilot into your R Studio, or even your Anaconda or your PyCharm if you use Python. So sorry, this one requires some internet, so let it run for a bit, but let me do another demonstration on this part. ggplot could not find a function. So, yep. Sorry. Um, yep, I want Malaysia to be painted in red. So that we know that that's Malaysia. So that, give them a very specific instruction. Hold on. This one, I tested it earlier. It worked. So let me test this again. Yeah lah. So, yep. So this is, you can get a scientific map immediately. So you don't have to remember all those script anymore. So that's how fast. And then this is online. And another thing is you can also write a script inside this RStudio environment, and it comes up with a script for you. But this one is a little bit simpler. If you need some what I call as a Grammarly check for your scripting, you can integrate Copilot in it. Like for example, my script just came out on the top. I only asked one line of question and it came out with all the script right here. So I don't really need to remember all the script anymore, not that really. But then the question comes, so what do we need coders for? What do we need experts in coding? What do we need to learn all the JavaScripts and C++ and Python anymore, right? That's a difference between experts and entry level. What they are giving us right now is an entry level, not necessarily the best script. You saw just now that I put on the first script and came back error. So that's where the experts comes in. We know what's the error. We know what's the problem there. So large language model proved to give us a better waypoint of going into coding, but not necessarily let us become an expert by themselves. So expert requires experience. It requires a lot of work. And so from there, I know what's we know as an expert coder, we know what's the problem of that code produced by the large language model, right? So from now on, I hope there's no excuse that, Python, it's too hard to learn. No, we have this and we have this. So I believe that, the entry level will be much easier, right, for these days. So another thing is that looking into pattern recognition. So like for one of these paper that I've wrote with one of my colleague in Bonaire and Curacao in the Caribbean. So went over to both islands. I then look into the diversity of the coral reefs, and then in fact, we didn't tell the computer what depth and what island, and then we allow the computer to recognize the patterns of the clustering. So you see, this is actually generated by the computer, the machine itself. The color codes generated by the machine, and then we plot it on a map, and then we can see that what's happening with these different colors at different time point. That means most of the red will be at the northern part of the island. Southern part of the island is blue and purple. So this was given a priori. We didn't ask the computer to cluster it and then let them cluster it based on their own learning capabilities. So we can identify the patterns. Yep. Yes, I just now, if you want to conduct statistics, depending on what stats are you doing. Like for example, you want to do a simple ANOVA t-test, you can do it you can do it now. In fact, you just need to put in your data, right? And then your data have specific column. You ask that code, this is the data I want you to run. I want to run this test, and I want to run for this. Please provide me the code. And then you copy and paste it into your scripts and run it. The output, you can take the output, put it into the large language model and ask it to write a proper paragraph report for you. So because the statistic program, the running of the stats has to be run in the program. And then once you have the output, then only you can you get that output, put it into a large language model to convert it into text rather than a table form of output. But R do have a function in Quattro that can do it natively in the R Studio, where you can ask it to generate a script, run the stats in R, ask it to file a report, make a report based on the output just in R without using the large language model online. But you need to have internet. But again, before you can do that, you need to have a proper setup of your R Studio before you can do that, because it's a pipeline. Or else, I mean, if you are entry level, I'll just suggest using the easy route, copy paste, just switching windows. It's a small inconvenience, but at least you don't have. If you want to set it up, then you can set it up the whole thing, but it takes time to set up. And then the third one is prediction. So this is a hackathon back in 2023. 4 students from Institute of Climate Change won the grand prize winner for Ocean Hackathon champion of the world back in 2023. What they did was they predict the jellyfish bloom by using the data from CMAX USM. So CMAX USM, especially Mr. Sim, was gracious enough to provide his data for them to come up with a model to predict. And their prediction was very accurate. They didn't predict the volume, but they predict the pattern, which means what goes up should go. They predicted the jellyfish abundance to go up. It happened. It went up, but the magnitude was different. But at least we know, we can provide an early warning system. And also modeling of the ocean. You can use artificial intelligence to learn from this. So this was a paper I made. I collaborate with at least 5 countries, I think, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, and Great Britain, the UK. So we try to predict model the effect of climate change on marine ecosystems from today up until 2100. So with the help of the supercomputer in UK, so we managed to come up with the ocean prediction, the ocean's environment prediction. And lastly, resource management. So using, like just now, you saw the pattern recognition, right? You recognize which area, what is the connectivity, even the network. You can use AI to link all the network. And from there, you can use it to assess MPAs, right? How to make marine spatial planning. How do you want to conduct a proper monitoring system whereby you don't need to expend too much resources on the whole area and you just target a few. So yeah, that's what I've been helping some of my colleagues here. And those were the research and publication or the works that I've done with my academic colleagues. So what else can we do with that artificial intelligence in marine sciences, right? So one of it is marine pollution control. We can use artificial intelligence, especially satellite image. And now NVIDIA has provided artificial intelligence framework to monitor global marine pollution tracking. Because you can, if you have a map, if you have maps of different timeline, you can also use artificial intelligence. If you know how to give them a proper instruction, you can request the map to draw the erosion or land filling or reclamation or sea claiming activities using the satellite image and automatically done using AI. You can do that. You can also identify water quality using the spectrum of the satellite spectrum, like chlorophyll A or even temperature, and then request the machine to give you a prompt back if there's any increase of temperature so that you can manage your reef, because coral reef, they are very susceptible to temperature increase. So if we can integrate that in our monitoring system, that would be great using satellite imaging. Sorry. So if you are using machine learning in detecting, it's okay. it is a method itself. It's a proper citation. But when it comes to writing, that's the part that you have to be careful when it comes to declaring it. Like for example, I've been using machine learning to look into the patterns of my distribution of the communities. It's okay because it's a method. But when it comes to ownership of the writing, the one who provide the perspective, the one who provide the discussion, the conclusion, it should be coming from my mouth, my fingers. So yeah, we should be careful when it comes to using large language model to write our writings. Yes, and that's the thing that push up over the ledge sometimes because we have writer's block, right? Or we have the fear of I've written this in some of my paper, but I'm doing almost the same thing, but it's different. But I'm having the same idea. I want to write the same sentence. So that's the pitfall. Sometimes we tend to turn to large language model, isn't it? So that's the writer's block and anxiety that we have that sometimes makes us turn to that kind of actions. And yeah, ocean observation and prediction modeling, like I mentioned just now, like the Southeast Asia paper, and some of the models that we have, like Windy TY or the Met Malaysia, they also do use some sort of artificial intelligence or machine learning to learn to predict the model. So in fact, if you think that artificial intelligence or machine learning is a new thing, it's not new. It's been here for many, many years. It's just that our communication with the machine has been broken because there is no proper bridge of language or communication between us. Only for the past 2 years that we have the large language model that we understand each other. Because before this, when we need something, we have to ask the programmer to program it. For now, we just ask the program rather than going through the programmer. But again, that's where the problem lies is number one, you have to ask the right question. Number two, you need to have an expert to vet the output. Because you do not, if you, how do you know whether your question is correct? And how do you know your output is correct? You still need an expert to do that. But again, like I mentioned, the entry level will be much lower than before, right? And then there's also marine biodiversity monitoring. So this is what I call YOLO. It's not you only live one, but you only look once. So this is a software that I learned from my experience in hackathon, whereby this has been used by, I mean, a lot of countries, even the government, to identify people, right? The facial feature, the cars, even Tesla is using some sort of this kind of model to identify human road signs, animals, baby crossings, and all whatnot. So why don't we use this to identify our marine biodiversity through photography? So you just take a photo, send it to the model, and then you try first. You have to train it. Give it that photo. Tell it is this organism, and it's not just one photo. You need to have a lot of photos before it can 100% or at least more than 70% sure that that's the organism. So that is where you learn let the machine or the model learn how to identify the marine organism. Once it is stabilized, then you can use it. You can publish it to the public to identify the organisms as quick as possible. So one of the problem with monitoring effect and monitoring activities is more on accuracy of identification and the time spent to identify all the pictures, photos, and organisms. So if we can use machines to immediately identify I wouldn't say down to the species or genus level, but at least a general, like for example, hard coral, soft coral, sand, fish, sea urchin. These are actually good enough to identify, to have a quick and dirty way of monitoring our marine ecosystem. And with that, we can easily identify where is a stress ecosystem, where can we preserve or conserve the habitat without a lot of human resources putting in. And another one, yeah, like I mentioned, sustainable fisheries. So me and some of our colleagues in UM and UPM, We have been looking into fisheries, predicting the fisheries abundance all around South China Sea up until the Philippines. And we have looked, our data is not published yet, but we are at the final stage of our writing. And we try to look into all the important marine species, fishes, commercially important fishes, how their distribution or how they travel or migrate with the increase of seawater temperature or climate change or even human pressure, such as IIUs or unregulated, unreported and illegal fishings. So we hope that we can come up with a proper framework and policy for the policymakers to identify what is the best way to manage our resources, especially our food security. So before I end this, moving forward, what is my expectation? So let us collaborate, right? I have been doing a lot of R programming classes and also consultation and collaboration with people all around the world. I mean, I do notice one thing is that we do need a group of people, researchers who are good in statistics to help other researchers in the university, not just in the faculty, but in the university, to provide them consultancy or advice, or at least a collaboration work to provide a more robust or more comprehensive data analytics and to improve the quality of the output, the data, so that we can, make full use of the available data. So I'm open for any collaboration or research work. I'm happy my office is just at the Earth Observation Center next to UNICAP. So if you want, you can always drop me an email. I think that's all from me. Thank you.